Welcome back. We're continuing on in this video series about dimensional analysis. So we've already completed 2 videos where we went through an introduction to dimensional analysis, as well as a second video where we talked about density as a unit conversion. So in this video, we're going to focus on when the given units are considered to be multiple, such as kilometers per hour, and we're also going to look at when units are squared or cubed. So in the next example, the winner completed the race with an average speed of 229.8 kilometers per hour. What was his speed in feet per second? And they give us the conversion between meters and feet. Okay, so here, remember when we see that equality, that means that this must be a conversion factor. Okay, and they're asking what is his speed in feet per second? Okay, so that must be the target. And therefore, the only other information given is, of course, going to be what we start with. All right, so if we set this up, we're going to write the 229.8 kilometers, and I'm going to go ahead and write that over 1 hour. Okay, and then what we're trying to get to at the end, our target is in feet per 1 second. Okay, so I like to focus on the top first and make those kilometers, convert those into feet, and then focus on the bottom and convert the hours into seconds. So if we start with those kilometers and we need to get them into feet, the only conversion factor that we're given is meters to feet. Okay, so that seems like a great step at the end, but we need a way to get from kilometers to meters. And so that first step, we're going to have to memorize that 1 kilometer is equal to 1,000 meters, or 10 to the 3rd meters. Okay, so in our first step, we're going to convert from kilometers to meters, and then the hours stay the same. We're not going to touch those for a bit. So it becomes meters over 1 hour. And then in the next step, we're going to convert from meters to feet because we're given the conversion factor for that. So 1 meter is equal to 3.281 feet. Okay, and so now we're going to know what it is in feet per hour. And once we've got the top units to match our target, now we're going to focus on the bottom and go from hours to seconds. And you may know that there's 3,600 seconds in an hour, but if not, we can first convert from hours to minutes. Okay, so again, this is something that you have to memorize, but most of us know that in 1 hour, we have 60 minutes. Okay, so now we're going to leave the feet alone. Those stay the same, and we're going to convert it into question mark feet over 1 minute. We always want 1 to be on the bottom every time that we finish a conversion. Okay, and then in the last step, we know that 1 minute is equal to 60 seconds. Okay, so there's our roadmap built. We're going to start with the given information of 229.8 kilometers per 1 hour, or sorry, just an H for hour, multiply by our first conversion factor. And so if we're trying to cancel out the kilometers to get to meters, then we need to make sure that the kilometers are diagonal. So from that equality, we're going to take the 1 kilometer and put that underneath the fraction, and then the equals 10 to the 3rd meters on top. Okay, so remember when we're building that conversion factor, we're always pulling from the equality underneath the arrow. Okay, so their kilometers are diagonal, they'll cancel. Multiply by our second step. Now we're converting from meters to feet. And so again, from that equality, I want the meters to be diagonal, so I'm going to use that 1 meter underneath my conversion factor, and then the 3.281 feet on top. Meters cancel, and now I have feet. And remember that anything that's not canceled, this hour is still sitting over here. Those units have not canceled, and we still have the feet here. Okay. Everything else is canceled out. In our next step, we're looking at converting from hours to minutes. So we still got this hour at the beginning over here. And we know that there is 1 hour in 60 minutes. So this time, if I want to be diagonal, the hour is on the bottom starting out in my given information. And so the hour from the equality, that needs to go up top, so that they're diagonal and they can cancel across. Okay, and then that forces the 60 minutes from the equality to go underneath. Now my hours have canceled and I have got feet per minute right now. Okay, and then the last step, of course, we're going to go from minutes to seconds. So from my equality, I have 1 minute. That has to go diagonal to the minutes. And so that's going to go on top of my conversion factor so that the minutes can cancel. And then that forces the 60 seconds to go underneath. Okay, so now everything has canceled out, and the only thing that I have left are the feet up top here and the seconds down bottom here, which is what my target is feet per second. Okay, so plugging this into a calculator and considering sig figs, our given information, our starting number of 229.8, that was 4 sig figs. Most everything in our conversion factors was considered exact, except for this feet per meter right here. Okay, that is not exact because we're converting between the US and the metric system, and so that 3.28 is also 4 sig figs. Now, the 1 meter is considered exact, but the 3.281 is 4 sig figs, and so we need 4 sig figs in our answer, and rounding that off, you get 209.4 feet per second. And remember, you always want it to be out of 1 on the bottom for your final answer. So you do want to multiply out so you get a single number. Okay, we'll do at least one more example. Now in this next example, we are looking at area, which is in squared units. And they give us 96,981 miles squared and asking what is the area in square kilometers. Okay, so the square kilometers is our target, and the only information that they give us has to be the given information that we start with. Okay, so starting with that 96,981 miles squared, and asking at the end, what is that in kilometers squared? Okay, so somewhere we will need to know how many miles that there are in a kilometer. Depending on what your instructor is willing to give you, you might have to convert from miles down to feet, and then from feet over to meters, and then back to kilometers. But in this example, we're just going to assume that we're given the information that 1 mile is equal to 1.609 kilometers. Okay, to keep this first example simple. So in this case, I only really need one step because I know what there are in from miles to kilometers. But the issue is that we have to square the units in the equality. So 1 mile is not the same thing as 1 mile squared, right? 1 mile, if you're going down the street in one direction, that would be 1 mile. But if we're talking about 1 mile squared, we're looking at 1 mile by 1 mile. Okay, and of course, if we square this, 1 squared mile squared, it still comes out to be 1 square mile. But that's not true if we look at it from the kilometers perspective. Okay, it's not as simple as it being the same number, right? Because 1 mile is equal to 1.609 kilometers, and by 1.609 kilometers. So we've got to square the 1.609 as well as the kilometers, and you'll find that that does not come out to be 1.609. So we can keep it simple by leaving it as 1.609 squared in our calculation, or you're welcome to solve this, where you would get 2.588 and 9. Okay, we do want to keep at least one extra digit beyond the 4 so that we don't have round off errors. So you're welcome to use that number, but I'm going to stick with the 1.609 squared and do it all at once. Okay, but the purpose is that we have to now use this equality underneath our arrow of 1 mile squared equals 1.609 kilometers squared. Okay, and so that's just one step all the way over to kilometers squared, starting out with our 96,981 miles squared times, and to get the miles to cancel from our equality, we're going to pull the 1 mile squared and put it underneath the conversion factor so that those units will cancel, and then that forces the other part of the equality, the 1.609 squared kilometers squared, on top. Okay, when we solve this, of course, the 96,981 has 5 sig figs. But the conversion factor that I'm using, this is not an exact number because we're converting between the metric and the US system, and so this is considered 4 sig figs, and therefore my final answer needs to be 4 sig figs as well. Okay, and we're going to report this in scientific notation, 2.511 times 10 to the 5th kilometers squared. Okay, so unless you're very careful about making sure to square that 1.609, I recommend going ahead and squaring it, keeping an extra digit and using that instead. And so that would be the 96,981 miles squared times 2.5889 kilometers squared over 1 mile squared. Okay, but you should come out to get the same answer. So we'll go ahead and stop here, and then in the next video, we'll do one more example with cubed units, and we will finish up with a parts per billion question. Okay.